Hello and welcome to 100% Real with Ruby. Today I have someone who has not been on in a while, but we have done 5 episodes, I think it is, before this one. And today I have with me Marci Nevin, and she speaks a lot about the simple basics of keeping consistency, keeping progress going by not going, number one, not going all or nothing. Number two, realizing that your body is not built after one fat loss cycle, which is something that you will hear me say on and on and on again. But the most important thing that we both kind of harp on about and that she's going to introduce this podcast with is the belief that it needs to be hard to be effective, that we need to grind to have it work, that if we don't feel like we're doing all of these things or if we don't implement all of these habits all at the same time, it's not going to work. So, how exactly does this mentality lead us to not really getting anywhere far despite it feeling like it's working?
Well, I think because people haven't even mastered the basics. So, what would those be? Drinking enough water, eating enough protein, a vegetable with most meals, getting, let's say, 8,000 steps a day minimum, being able to manage stress effectively, getting enough sleep. Those are the foundational habits that I don't care if you are in maintenance or a fat loss phase, need to be adhered to. And I like to say, what makes you think you're going to be able to do something hard or aggressive if you can't even effectively be consistent with those fundamentals? Like, if we think about it, those are just the basic habits that any grown ass human should be able to implement to take care of themselves. And so often my clients come to me struggling to do even that. And then they want to layer all of this more like hardcore stuff on it. So more workouts, more cardio. Can I drop my calories even lower? It's like, let's get you to even stick to your maintenance calories for a couple of weeks before we slash them to 1,200. Let's get you to hit 8,000 steps per day before you do 5 workouts per week. Let's get you sleeping minimum 7 hours per night before you try to do keto. Like, those are just examples that come up for me. But I mean, I think part of it is for no fault of their own. They have that sense of urgency. They are feeling uncomfortable. They want to get out of that discomfort as soon as possible. And they see, all this sexy stuff, likely on social media, and they buy into that trap, really, that this is what is going to be needed in order for them to achieve that result, when really it is just going to backfire. And let's be honest, anyone can white knuckle through a really strict or aggressive protocol for a couple of weeks. But what happens, because so many of my clients are busy working professionals, they are moms, like they have a social life. So they're not just living in this bubble like maybe a bodybuilder would, right? Who doesn't care about not going out, who just goes to gym, or excuse me, goes to work, goes to the gym, comes home, that's it. Like, yeah, when that's your lifestyle and that's your mentality, it is easy to adhere to something really strict. But when life comes up and you're thrown in these situations, you've got to be able to navigate them. And if you want this to be sustainable for the long term, not only getting the results in the short term, but being able to maintain those, yeah, you have to figure out how to make a plan fit into your life. Whether it's celebrations, for birthdays, anniversaries, the holidays, just going out to eat with friends, being able to still adhere to a plan is so important. And if you are trying to be on a diet where you're only able to eat protein and vegetables and you have to cut everything out, like, good luck being able to stick to that for more than a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and it is this whole taking a bodybuilding approach that is perpetuated online. Like, we're still reinforcing the same beliefs that have existed for the years before realizing, hey, it doesn't need to be that hard. How has that worked for you before? But at the same time, any change is going to be difficult because it's something different from where you were. So instead of trying to make all these changes all at once, doing the whole all or nothing thinking or the perfectionist mentality, it's trying to make things easier for where you are now. And one thing that I find stops a lot of people from being consistent is that if it can't be perfect, there's no point doing it. Or if it can't be your standard, your ideal, then there is no other option. But there are things that you can do to set yourself up for success. For example, when you're talking about the whole, like, the calorie side of the portion, there's the step side of the portion. Let's talk about those two elements first and how we can actually make our nutrition easier, our macro tracking easier, because winging it is not going to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, first and foremost, you got to plan ahead. And that is probably the biggest challenge, I would say, that my clients struggle with is I don't want to say they refuse, but more often than not, they are not taking the time the night before to plan out the next day. So yes, they are trying to wing it as the day goes on. And as I was saying earlier, so many of them are either busy moms, busy professionals, maybe they are both. And I mean, I'm sure you've had this experience where you're supposed to be tracking, maybe you do not pre-plan your day ahead of time. And then the day starts, it gets really stressful. You're busy, you're running around, from doing thing to thing, and trying to log is just like one more task that you have to do. And it can be very cognitively demanding. So if you already have so many things in your brain that you are having to try to navigate that day, then taking the time to stop and log your meal into MyFitnessPal is just going to feel like this burdensome task. And most likely you're going to be like, screw this. I'm not going to do it. Or maybe, oh, I'll get to that later. I'll log at the end of the day. Well, good luck remembering what you actually had, or, actually taking the time to sit down and do it. So that is what I come up against most often with my clients, is just that resistance for whatever reason. And I think that there are multiple that they do not want to plan the day ahead of time, or that they don't even, plan food for the week. Like, oh, I didn't have any protein prepped. I didn't have any veggies chopped. And you wonder why you aren't able to be adherent and why you make impulsive decisions, because you don't have anything prepped and ready to go.
Yeah, and I think another big reason to this is we are so scared of the things we need to give up. And as you would have heard on the podcast before this one, we don't realize that, number one, like, the level of sacrifice you need to give to a fat loss phase is not the level of sacrifice you need to give forever. However, there are changes that you are going to need to keep constant, but it's not even the thing itself, it's the mindset behind it. And I had a conversation with someone earlier today, and it was more so the fact that if you understood the trade-offs for every single choice that you make, you will want to make better choices. Because if you keep making the fast food route your choice, the sweet food option your choice, the burger, the donut, whatever it is, it's not that they are inherently bad. It's, what is the cost of that? Is it you never feeling satisfied? You feeling like you hardly eat but can't get results because you are hardly eating volume wise, but you are overeating calorie wise. And if you eat something sweet, I'm sure you can elaborate on this later on as well. If you keep giving your sweet taste buds their orgasm hit in your mouth, then you're going to keep craving sweet foods. If you keep trying to make your foods as highly palatable as possible, you're going to keep wanting to eat and eat beyond your fullness cues. And if you make the options you want more accessible, or you don't, like, this is where sometimes a coach can really come in handy, because you might not think about these different strategies that you can implement to make things easier. Like if your house is loaded with chips and crisps and candies, you're going to gravitate more towards those. If that's what's on the counter, you're going to gravitate more towards those. But if you made the better options more available, or if you thought about what more you can add into your diet, the smallest steps that you can take to just move away from the lifestyle you're living now and then feed that habit consistently, it's going to be so much easier. But something that we spoke about on a previous podcast together, which I think is worth reiterating here, is how that whole busy lifestyle, or trying to eat like a bird through the day, or trying to rush results, kind of leads to you repeating the same habits over and over again. Because when you finally get to exhale, what do we gravitate towards?
Yeah. It's really interesting because I've been having this conversation with quite a few clients lately. And I think the majority of women that I work with struggle with it. I mean, I did at some point as well. And I want to make a post about this. I just haven't found the right way to articulate it. Not that I haven't found the right way to articulate it. I don't know what the best type of content is to deliver it. And it's such an important message that I want it to be read. And of course, none of my content is really getting viewed these days. So it's like, I probably, won't as well. But yeah, I don't know what form, is it a reel? Is it a swipe post? Is it a tweet? But it's, I think, the most important message that I will ever share and that I will ever teach to my clients, because, you and I have both struggled with disordered eating, right? So whether that was eating too little food for a period of time, trying to be our smallest and leanest selves and thinking that, that was the way to do it. And then eventually coming out of that, finding flexible dieting, tracking macros, which is wonderful. Like that approach is what helped me, quote unquote, heal my relationship with food for the most part, because it taught me that there really are no good and bad foods, that I could eat the foods that I at one point put off limits because I thought that it was going to lead to weight gain, and that I had avoided for so long. And then, when I finally found flexible dieting, tracking macros, and I saw like, oh, I can't eat that frozen yogurt. I can eat the potatoes or the cheese or, whatever it was. And I can still like get really lean and in the best shape possible. Oh, light bulb moment. This is amazing. So there was a lot of freedom in that mindset shift and in that realization. However, where I think a lot of people still struggle, because for the majority of my clients, we do track macros, but that does not heal their relationship with themselves or their relationship with how they approach food. And what I mean by that is, you can say all day, oh, the cookie's not bad, I can make it fit. But if you are using cookies, ice cream, any hyperpalatable food, alcohol even, as a coping mechanism and as a way to self-soothe and basically regulate your nervous system, because you do not know how to sit with your emotions. You do not know how to be in that state of discomfort where maybe there is anxiety, fear, sadness, loneliness, boredom, whatever the uncomfortable emotion is that we do not want to have to feel, and we use food or alcohol to numb from, then you're going to have a really hard time getting results, because what happens at the end of the day? Oh, it was long, it was hard, my kids are driving me crazy, I'm overstimulated, I deserve to have this, or I have no other coping mechanisms and a way to settle myself, instead of food and alcohol. And so that's what they turn to. And what happens then? They feel guilty. Oh, I went a little bit over, so might as well keep going. I already blew it. So it's that kind of, one, perfectionist mentality, the all or nothing thinking, coupled with an inability to, cultivate tools that can help them feel more comfortable or safe in the moment.
Yeah, and that's the other part of it as well. It's we think that chasing small or another diet or just getting leaner is going to make us feel happier within ourselves, is going to cure whatever thing it is that we are trying to run away from, that's going to make us feel happy and confident and to be happy in our body pretty much. But it's the underlying emotion, because you can change your body all you want, but if nothing's really changed in your life and you're still going to that food for comfort, or you don't feel in control of your results, or whenever something happens in life, you can't show up for yourself because now all these emotions are there that you can't really handle. That's where
Mhm.
confidence comes from. It comes from knowing that you're going to do what you said you're going to do, that you can still show up for yourself when life gets crazy, that you show
Mhm.
up for yourself regardless. And this is where that all or nothing mindset comes in, because, and the perfectionism. Because if you feel like you can only show up if you're being perfect, if you're holding up to this unrealistic standard that you set for yourself, you're not going to be able to show up when situation doesn't allow you to do that, or when you don't have the capacity to do that. And I was reading this little
Right.
part in the book from Johnny Wilk, like it mentioned some high performer, I think he's a footy player or something, but every single time that he went to play on the field, he held such an unrealistic standard of perfection on himself that it built up so much pressure within him that he never actually enjoyed the process. He was
Mm.
always trying to beat his prior performance, which just led to injury after injury after injury until he had to take a whole step back in order to move forward. And I feel like that's the approach a lot of people take with their nutrition, with their training, with their whole fitness and fat loss journey. And I guess
Mhm.
I guess you can actually elaborate on what I just said, but it also comes to, are you really mentally and physically in a position to start the fat loss phase now? And
Yeah.
the biggest thing that I find myself harping over and over about in my own content is it's it's not just the mental and physical process of getting you like of a fat loss phase, because yes, you need to make sure you're mentally and physically there, but it's like you're still going to make progress outside of that. And if your only meaning of progress is when you're leaning down, or you feel like you're only on track or only making progress or only being good or whatever it is, you're only succeeding or winning when you're in a fat loss phase, when you're laying down and you can't enjoy any other aspect, kind of like, what's the whole point to this? You can't just lose weight forever. You can't lean down forever. But the most important part is deficiting or fat lossing, or that term there isn't what's going to give you the body that you want, the happiness that you want, the confidence that you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you and I have had that experience more times than we would like to admit.
Hmm.
And you have to keep learning the lesson over and over again until you finally figure it out. But yeah, there have been many times when I thought that, yeah, losing the last 5 pounds or building more muscle, getting leaner, whatever my goal was at the time, that when that happened, I would feel this sense of peace. And yes, like it feels good to feel good and confident in your skin, for your clothes to fit comfortably, all of that. I mean, I'm not going to lie, but if you do not get to the root of why you don't love and accept yourself, it's still not going to be enough. And you're still going to be chasing the proverbial goalpost, asking yourself, what's next? How can I build more muscle? How can I get even leaner? It's like, it's just this never ending or never enough mentality. And really, your problems don't go away. So I have been very lean numerous times over. And a lot of the stuff that I thought would get better as a result didn't. I still had the same fears and insecurities and problems that I was working through. If anything, being in that mindset, because when you're really lean, like I don't think you're ever the best version of yourself, especially on the way to that. You're tired, you're hungry, you're irritable. It's just no way to live. And I have also had to learn that lesson over and over again, that your leanest self is not necessarily your happiest self or your best life. I've had two major long-term relationships end when I was at my leanest and when I thought that my body looked the best, because I was not the most authentic, best version of me. I was very in my head. It was all about Marci, and I could not show up, really presently or fully in my life or in my relationships,
And
because
we
I didn't have the capacity to do so.
yeah, and we tend to, on the relationships note, we tend to attract to us who we are inside right now. So if it's that whole like lean, blah, 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 we might attract like a narcissist or someone who makes us feel even worse about the whole thing, because then it's a very physical, like we're trying to make ourselves still feel good about ourselves. So that's what we try to seek in the other person. And that in itself is just gonna feed the negative cycle you're in. And that's when it's like slowing down and asking yourself, what is it that's actually, because you get more fearful to lose it once you get it. So it's like once you get lean, now the biggest fear is, oh my God, what if I get fat? What if I lose progress? What if I go backwards? I can't lose it now. So then you get even harder. You get even more narrow-minded and more narrow focused, that you don't even see them, like you don't even see the cycle you got yourself stuck in. And then that's when you have to ask yourself, what is actually required of me to keep these things? And I do have the ability to do this because I've proven to myself that I can do this. But I can see in my reality that this hasn't made me happy. So how can I use these strengths that I have, and what is actually required of me to get to where I want to be? But how does that even, how do we even do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And another thing I always like to say is, because I think we want to change our body so that we feel better about ourselves, but also we do it for validation, self-acceptance, and so that other people will see us, so to speak, or deem us as worthy. That's definitely what it was for me. I wanted other people's recognition. I thought that the better that I looked, the more people would like me, that I would always be safe, that I would always have a relationship or love in my life, whatever the case may be. And again, that just was not the case. So, one thing that I needed, the lesson that I had to continue learning was people care so much less, if at all, about how you look, and they care more about how you make them feel. And I will tell you, some of the people who mean the most to me in my life, their bodies certainly are not what you would deem the most fit or in shape. Maybe they're a little bit overweight. They don't take the best care of themselves. I mean, and that hurts me to see because I want them to be healthy. But it doesn't change the way I actually view them and the value that they bring to my life.
I actually think a very important thing here to touch on is, what frame of mind are you approaching this through? A lot of people don't realize, they think they're aware, but they're not honestly aware. It's like you challenge your beliefs, except those ones that you think most fundamentally to be true. And every time we look at things online or we read books, we listen to podcasts. I know this is the case with me because I have read things or seen things a second time or a third time, and I got a different value out of it. I got a different perspective out of it because I viewed it with a different lens. And
Mm-hmm.
everything that you've just said, we can easily not see that. Yeah, that would make sense. We can easily not see that in ourselves. And the mindset, the frame of mind, we can't get anywhere unless we have a growth mindset, unless we have an open mindset. And I know you've done a lot of Karen Nordin stuff as well. And she speaks about this a lot within her stuff, is yeah, it's that. It's like you need to have that growth mindset, and you need to take an account of, it's kind of like a bank statement. Because if you look at your bank statement, if you look at your schedule, you know where your priorities are, you'll know where you're putting most of your focus. Is most of your focus into things that grow you or shrink you? Are you willing to shift your current perspective of the way things are, to slow down? Maybe you can talk a little bit more about how that frame of mind can help see, like, the ways that you help your clients through it as well.
Slowing down in what capacity?
To recognize that what we're doing hasn't served us, that
Mm,
rushing the process hasn't really rushed it at all if we're still struggling
mm,
this many years later, and
mm,
being
mm.
open to the fact that we might not have a growth mindset.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of my clients come to me already with a lack of self-belief because they've tried so many approaches at this point that have not worked, and they make it mean something about themselves. They feel guilt and shame, and essentially it's this, belief that I am not capable of change, and that in itself is a fixed mindset. So we have to take a step back and, see it from a wider lens and ask, is it really something to do with you? Are you at fault here for not being able to follow the plan? Or is it more the plan was set up to essentially make you fail and was not sustainable from the beginning? So that mindset shift is really important. And I always tell them too, you have to be patient and kind with yourself. You have to give yourself so much grace, because if you have had, hardwired beliefs from a very young age, and then you're also cementing those with um, taking these approaches that don't work or you fall off track, then yeah, you're just kind of like layering poor belief system upon poor belief system. And what I mean when I talk about experiences that happen in childhood, I mean, it can be this very insidious type of mindset that they don't even realize they have until we start to have those conversations. So for example, I have clients whose parents would always say, you can't get up from the dinner table unless you clean your plate. And so they take that with them into adulthood. So they eat past fullness, they eat when they're not hungry. And rather than saying, hey, I am the adult here, I get to make my own decisions, I get to follow the rules that I am going to set for myself, they still have, mom, dad, grandparent, whoever it is, in the back of their mind, and they are essentially living their life based on those old belief systems. So that's one thing. I had a conversation not with a client, but actually a friend that I reconnected with. She and I went to college together and have not seen each other for almost 20 years. So we met up last week. She had reconnected with me over Instagram. So she saw my page, she sent me a DM. She's like, oh my gosh, I love what you're doing. So amazing. So we met up and she was just talking to me about her own health journey and how she has struggled with emotional eating, her weight, doing like the very extreme rigid dieting that actually ended her up in the hospital because she was clinging so tightly to those immediate results that she got. She went to some, I don't even know, like a center where they basically said you can only drink 2 shakes a day and then eat 1 meal at night. And the weight was just coming off. I mean, of course, right? And mostly water at first. But that dopamine hit of seeing the scale go down, her clothes fitting better, the compliments from others, she like really, took that to mean, okay, this is working. And if this is working, then if I push even harder, I am going to be able to make more progress. So she went from 2 shakes a day to 3 shakes a day. And yeah, it just totally backfired. She got incredibly sick, was in the hospital. I don't think she like almost died, but it was a very dicey situation. So, things like that can happen. And the other thing she was sharing with me, because we were talking about old belief systems, is that she was an emotional eater. So like I was saying earlier, so many of my clients, and I'm sure Ruby, the women that you work with, the people who are struggling with their weight, is because they are using food to self-soothe. So she was saying that when she grew up, her mom would always tell her, oh, you worked so hard, or you've had a hard day, you deserve something good to eat. And something good to eat is never, a piece of salmon and some broccoli and a sweet potato. It's no, the macaroni and cheese and the fried chicken. Right? So you associate that comfort food that is very hyperpalatable, indulgent, calorie dense, as a reward. So I could go on for a long time with, more examples of that, but I think that's one thing. And then you layer that on top of, yeah, this lack of belief in themselves because they have, quote unquote, failed so many times, and they take that first instance of failure where they slip up on your program, to mean something about themselves. Oh, I'm not made for this. I can't do it. Why do I even bother? And then that all or nothing mentality starts to spiral. So what happens? They let one slip up snowball into many.
Yeah, and
And it reconfirms that belief.
feeding off everything you just said, she didn't see that happening in the moment. Like, you won't see this happening in the moment because you're too involved with what you're doing. You're so fixated on using food as your control mechanism, wanting to control your body, wanting to fix, quote unquote, your body. And like, yeah, I value the fuck out of my appearance, but it's not all I value. It's not what drives my actions. It's not what drives my life. What drives my life is everything else that is what kind of makes up my identity. It's realizing your identity isn't just your body. Your value isn't just your body. You don't want people to value you for just your body. Yet when you take that approach, that's exactly the type of relationships you're going to form. That's exactly the life you're going to create. And it's just going to keep reiterating shrinking your body or whatever else it is. And some people may then end up binging on food or overeating on food because they're so fixated on wanting to fix their body instead of just shifting your habits one by one, shifting your lifestyle one by one. Because to have a different physique, to have a different outcome, your body is a reflection of the life that you live. It's the actions that you take, it's the choices that you make. And a mistake that you make more than twice is a choice because you
I love that.
on that. I know
Mm,
there's someone that says more than once is a choice, but I think more than twice because you might not be aware of it the first time. It might just trigger you that
yeah,
first time. And then the second
yeah.
time, you actually are noticing it now. So that's when you need to reflect, what is it that I need? What skills do I need to develop? What help do I need to invest in? What this, what that? What do you need to help you out of that cycle? Is it a physical cue? Is it a financial investment? A physical integration, which I just said? Is it having a reminder? Is it having an alarm? Is it having a restraint put in place to stop you repeating that habit? Figure out what it is. But awareness
Yeah.
in itself is a win. And something else that you mentioned, go.
Oh, no, I was just going to say awareness is always the first step. And one of my favorite phrases that I say over and over again is you can't read the label when you're inside the jar. So oftentimes it takes you getting out of your own head, maybe, reaching out to somebody who can see your blind spots to really open your eyes like, oh, this is what I'm doing. And then to dig a little further, well, not only, what are you doing, but why are you doing it? So getting to the root of that is really important.
Yeah, and when you feel uncomfortable, it's easy to blame your body for that as well. And that's where it's just like you see these really lean people that complain about feeling fluffy. And it's just
Oh,
like, but you are so lean. And you can
yeah.
see that they are lean, but they are saying they are fluffy. Or someone that you think looks amazing has body image issues and they're saying how crap they look, how crap they feel, how crap this, that, and the other. But you're like, but you look amazing. But yet we
Mm,
don't put that same perspective onto ourselves because we do not see
mm,
ourselves as we are. And
yeah.
this is, like I was saying, it's like valuing your appearance so much and clinging to it that you don't even know how you feel anymore. So anything foreign to you feels like, oh my God, my body's getting fat. I need to fix my body. I feel out of control. And that can happen with food as well. It's like if you're not in control of that thing where it's just like you're fine through the week. And then finally you're off work, you have the weekend, you can finally relax and you go to food. And this is where your whole cycle starts because you're not feeling in control of your results. Go.
Yeah, I just talked about this or I wrote about it on my Instagram stories because I have a client who just broke out of the 200s this today. And she sent me the text message like 199.6. We have worked together off and on for a couple of years. She came back to me maybe 6 months ago, and we have been trying to break that 200s this entire time. And she would get so close, and then the scale would go up again. I'm like, my dear, like this is self sabotage at its finest because And as you know, Ruby, the brain is very sneaky and it wants to keep you safe. So even if logically you tell yourself, I want to lose the weight, I want to fit in my clothes better, I want to have more energy, confidence, and whatever that is for you, your brain still sees that as a threat because it's different. And different can be uncomfortable for whatever reason. Is it, oh, I'm going to have to keep up this lifestyle for the rest of my life, so maybe I don't want that result? Or are people not going to want to be friends with me anymore because I'm no longer the fun one? It really can like take a hit to your identity, or how you view yourselves. And again, there's like so many layers to this. It's very complex. I won't get into it all, but as she was
That's actually
approaching that,
amazing. That is
huh?
amazing. This is probably what a lot of people can relate to. So you can probe that a little bit deeper if you want to.
Yeah. So as she was getting closer to 200, I'm like, we're almost there. And I sent her a check-in response last week. And I said, I want to congratulate how far you've come. I know that the 190s are right around the corner. However, you have to be very aware and careful. Like, this is where the rubber meets the road. And this is where people tend to self-sabotage, because you're getting a little bit too comfortable and cocky. That's one. But also your brain is going to start playing tricks on you because, oh, I haven't seen this number for, I don't even know how long. What is that going to be like? Like, yes, it's going to feel good, but then what happens after that? So she wrote me back and she said, you got me, Marci. I found myself at my mom's house earlier today with my hand in the candy jar. And it was that exact mentality. Oh, I've made this progress. I deserve to eat a little something, or I made this progress. So going a little bit over my calories, having the candy, whatever that choice is, that isn't in alignment with who you need to be or what you need to do in order to keep the progress going. Yeah, that's going to start to creep in. And I call it moral licensing. So that's what I was talking about today. And it is very real. So it's I got through a long work day or a long work week and I was really good. I deserve it. I stayed on track Monday through Friday. I deserve it. Or I stayed on track Monday through Friday. I'm seeing the results. So getting a little bit loose, letting go of those habits and behaviors, it's going to be okay. Like, I'm still going to be able to, see these results. And it's like, no, I wish that was the case, but what got you here for a reason. You've got to keep doing it. And often, if you want to keep making progress, you have to be even more dialed in. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, exactly the
Over
point. Like,
time, it's going to require even more adherence. You have to be that much more consistent to keep it going. So yeah, that's something that a lot of people can slip into. So all of this comes down to mindset. Absolutely.
mindset's the biggest pillar. And I was just going to say, this is a thing, like fat loss is the hardest part of this. Maintenance is so easy, but we kind of walk that around and fat loss becomes the easy part. Well, it's not even easy for most people would say, but like so many people have lost weight before. You keep losing and gaining the same freaking weight. So technically, weight loss is easy. It's maintaining it that
I think
is like for
let,
you.
let me say one thing. I think weight loss is simple. It's not easy.
That
There's a
no, that's
difference.
not trying. That I completely skewed up my words. Fat loss is hard. That's what I was trying to say. My bad. I skewed up my words. Fat loss is easy for you guys because you lose weight and then you put it back on again. But technically, fat loss is the hardest part of all. It's simple on paper, but it's hard to put in the sacrifices, to put in the trade-offs, to be okay with hunger. But that's exactly why fat loss is a phase, not a lifestyle. That's why you need more than one fat loss cycle. And I think this just clicked now. The reason why it's so important to accept the fact that it's more than one fat loss cycle is for the fact that by repeating that cycle over and over again, and I don't mean gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight. I mean losing a chunk of weight, then getting out, living at maintenance, thriving, building the muscle that you need to get the physique and the confidence that you want, because it's not the building of the muscle, it's the process. Once you marry the process, you marry confidence. But repeating that over and over again and spending more time out of a deficit is what builds the lifestyle so that you stop sabotaging when you start to see
Mm,
progress, because you realize that progress isn't just the scale going down. Progress is everything. It's the building. It's like the more that you focus on the outcome of trying to get to a certain number, the more that you're going to self-sabotage yourself, because there's nothing else to your process, which is something that you work on with your clients, I know as well, because all good coaches do. We work on the mindset of all of this stuff.
yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, mindset doesn't sell. People only care about the weight loss and getting to their desired outcome. They don't care about, changing the mindset. And it's really unfortunate because that's the foundation of it all, whether it's in fat loss or in maintenance.
Yeah, that just triggered something. You probably saw my face, but because I'm in a lot of Facebook groups, I always get triggered when I see this. And if I was the admin of these groups, I would ban these people because it's so toxic. Like, they post these shredded, lean, comp prep physiques, or these, well, the other ones aren't as bad, but it's like a lot of people post these shredded physiques and everyone floods to them, comments on it. How'd you do this? What's your exercise plan? What are your macros like? It blows up with hundreds and thousands of likes because they're big groups. And then you see someone post like a 6-week transformation and it's huge. Everyone comments on that. And then you see people posting photos, like just Gen Pop people. Oh my God, do you see much change? It's been 2 weeks. I don't feel like I'm making any progress. It's like all of these different things you can kind of see at surface that it sounds ridiculous, asking for 1 week progress or 2 weeks progress, and then people were like backing it up when I kind of retaliated against that. Yeah, well, it's kind of encouraging to see progress. I'm like, realistically, how fast do you think real sustainable change happens? Do you think you're going to see crazy ass progress week to week? Is progress only in the physical? Because what if that person has all this shit that they need to work through first to even make the first sustainable step to change? Because a lot of the time, the steps that we take to change will never actually be permanent until we fix all this other shit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Very well said.
You got a lot to
Yeah.
sit on this.
Starts at the internal before you can transform the external.
Yeah, that one. And I'm pretty sure you've had that conversation with a lot of people as well.
Oh, everybody.
So
Absolutely.
impatience, perfectionism, all or nothing, they all blend together in some way. How does that, if we had to write like a monologue on it that is short, how would you say all of that impacts your results, your progress, your consistency, your ability to make this a lifestyle and not sabotage in the months to come?
Well, essentially, you give up too quick. You have these unrealistic expectations, and you don't realize that you did not. What's the phrase? Like, it takes you 10 years to walk into the forest. It's going to take you 10 years to walk out. It's something like that. I'm probably butchering it, but I think you understand what I mean. If it took you years to develop these habits, this mindset, and we understand brain programming at this point. Like, I am a huge fan of the brain. I talk about it all the time. I know it's not sexy. I should have been a scientist, not a fat loss coach. But your brain is like hardwired, or those neural pathways are hardwired from a very young age. I think your subconscious is being formed up until the age of 7. So everything that you see, that you hear, that becomes your belief system. And if you've taken that with you for 20, 30, 40, even 50 years. I mean, I have clients in their 60s who are still working on this. So you expect to just have it figured out with a flip of a switch? No, I'm sorry. It's going to take some time to do that reprogramming. And that really needs to come first, the building of the habits, and then, the physical progress you can start working on. So you have to be patient. And I know that it's not what anybody wants to hear. And, Ruby, it's so fascinating. I was having a conversation with a newer client this week who had a good first week. And this always happens, right? Like, you're really excited. You have that fire under your ass. You're doing the prep. You're really good and you're on track. And then the next week, life starts to get in the way. You maybe get a little bit comfortable. old habits start to creep in because that is comfortable. And then you start to have that lack of belief creep back in. So this new client was saying to me, like, I just don't know if this is possible for me. I'm like, yes, it's possible. You just cannot quit when it gets hard or when it feels like it's not working or that first misstep that you experience. And it's like, you have your master's degree, right? And she said, yeah. I'm like, you're married, right? Yeah. Well, did you expect your husband to propose on the first date? Did you expect to get your master's degree after the first class? Well, no. Then why is body composition or, whether it's fat loss, muscle building, habit and behavior change, why do we expect that to be an overnight process, but we are so willing for the other goals that we are working towards to take longer? The other mentality could be, all right, I think I asked her this too. Well, you make mistakes at work sometimes. Yeah, I do. Do you take your laptop and throw it into the river and quit the next day? Like, there's just so much faulty logic when it comes to our body. And I think it's, partly because it is, I don't necessarily want to go as far as saying that it's an identity, but we believe that that our image is what makes us valuable. And so if we look a certain way, then we are not going to be seen as valuable by society, by the people we love, all of that. So when we can control how we look, then we feel we are safe and secure and worthy. And, that's not always the case.
Yeah. And the fact that it's never really about the food, it's the emotions, because
Mhm.
food is emotional. Things we do, it's attached to emotion. Our actions are driven by emotions, which give us the thoughts that we have, and the thoughts that we have give us the emotions that we have. It's like a cycle,
Mhm.
but you can easily intervene with that. But I love that master's part because it's not just about getting it the next day, which you already said you don't do. It's the fact that when you're in the process of getting a degree, it gets easier each term towards like the end of each term because you worked through it, you gained the material. Now you got more and more knowledge. So you
Mhm.
gained the confidence. You're
Mhm.
better, less difficult as you gained it. But guess what happens next term? You got a new freaking subject to learn. So it gets hard again. It's when you want to level up to get to the end, there are always going to be hard points.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's similar to a post that I wrote today about easy being earned. So any change that you are trying to make is going to feel hard until it isn't. And so you have to put in the work. You have to be willing to accept the setbacks and the challenges, lean into that resistance and the discomfort, because any change you make is asking you to do something different that you've likely gotten very accustomed to for a long period of time. And it can feel really overwhelming, especially when you already have a lot on your plate that you're trying to manage. So, sometimes like the food that we eat or the habits we have, it allows us to just go on autopilot. And now you're like, oh, you're asking me to change what I eat. You're asking me to, think about what time I go to bed, or, whatever the example is that you want to use. That can be really demanding, and it just adds to your overall cognitive load. But you have to accept that nothing changes if nothing changes. And if you do desire to become this new person, you are going to have to step into that. But the more you do it, the more you practice, the easier it becomes. And finally, it's your new normal.
That's funny. That's exactly what I was going to say at the end. So I think this will tie it up really nicely too. But so it's different. It's hard. It's a new thing. And it's easier to go back to what you knew because that's what you're already doing now. So it's something you need to force. You need to actively force yourself to do the thing and to show up regardless, which is why if you listen back to the beginning, which is why we said you need to make it easier to start first. You need to not expect perfectionism, not expect 100%. So, revisiting the first part of the conversation there. And then it becomes something that it's not so bad, but it's still easier to do your old habits because, once again, it is your known, it's your usual routine. And then over time, you start to want to do the thing more because of you start to realize how good it makes you feel, the benefits of it.
Mm,
But you can
mhm.
still easily slip back into the old habit because it's still lying there and it's still roaring. It's not comfortable. Like, although we're saying that it's comfortable doing these habits that aren't serving you, it isn't truly comfortable if you think about it. But it's the fact that it's so familiar, it's the fact that it's the known, it's what we're accustomed to, like you said.
That is such a good way to put it. It's that uncomfortable, or the how do I even say it? Like
Comfortable isn't
your
really
your
comfortable.
current your current discomfort is comfortable, even if it's not, type of thing.
Yeah, but we see it that way exactly because we're accustomed
Yeah,
to it. That's
right.
yeah, and
But
then I love this part, which is why I wanted you to end on this, is the fact that now that we realize how good it feels, even though it's kind of still easy to slip back into the accustomed way, over time, we start to forge an identity. Like right now, it's like fitness and health aren't even on my goals list anymore. It's who I
mm,
am. I don't need to
mhm,
think about habits for it. I don't need to think about the struggle for it. And I
mhm,
think this is where a lot of people struggle as well because I was able to develop them in a time where I could put more time and devotion into it. And that's why sometimes we need to put things down in order to pick things up. What do you want to focus on now? Sometimes you need to sacrifice a, quite a lot of things in order to just get a habit ingrained, to get a habit on the road, and then just keep feeding that. It is
mhm,
only for a period of time. And this is why fat loss happens in phases. This is why you need to spend more time at maintenance. This is why you need to see it as a lifestyle. Because sometimes you do need
mhm,
to make more sacrifices. But back to that point, in that now the things that I struggle with the most, the things that I'm trying to develop habits for, have nothing to do with health and fitness. It's my identity. And that's the last part of all of this. From it being something that now you know how good it feels and how you don't want to feel, the cost of inaction is actually really important to get like clear on. Like I look around, I'm not frail, I'm not weak, I'm not getting sick all the time. I'm not I'm not like feeling dead by 3 p.m. I have all this energy. I'm able to do things for other people that they can't do for themselves because they don't have the strength to open a jar or pick something up or whatever the hell. Or people would ask me, do you need help with that? No, thank you. I got this. Like it becomes your identity. And that identity piece is what I wanted you to end this conversation on because that ties this whole thing together. And you don't
mm.
get born into a new identity. You create
Yeah, no,
one.
a new identity is created by, I think more than anything, keeping the promises that you make to yourself. And that is something that I talk about over and over again. So confidence is less about how you look. And also, if you are waiting to look a certain way until you feel confident, you're going to be waiting a long ass time because muscle building is slow, fat loss is slow. I mean, they can happen a little bit faster, but we've been working on our physiques for how long now, Ruby? and I'm still not necessarily where I want to be. And also, like, your body is going to fluctuate. So if that is what you're holding your hat on to feel good about yourself, then you're really building a house on a shaky foundation. So, how you cultivate confidence and build self trust, which I think is your absolute superpower, like knowing no matter what, you got you, knowing that you always follow through with what you say you're going to do, that is more empowering than anything. So, I'm sure you've heard me talk about the pillow test, but I always tell clients, and I do this with myself numerous times a day because we always are going to be at that decision point. So, maybe earlier today I was feeling stressed and I really wanted to eat the cookie. Well, I ask my future pace and I say, all right, let's delay the instant gratification. Maybe this is what you want most in the moment, but one, why do you want it? Is it really because that is, going to be satisfying, or are you doing it to deal with an uncomfortable emotion? And then I say to myself, how do you want to feel when your head hits the pillow tonight? Do you want to be proud of your choices, or do you want to feel disappointed that once again you broke that promise to yourself? And what's really interesting is, going back to whether it's myself or my clients, I'm a very high achieving person in many ways. And so are the people that I work with. They have like created a beautiful family. They have a successful job, but their health, their fitness is the place where they do not show up to them for themselves, where those promises are broken over and over again. And it's like, no matter how much you are checking the boxes in other areas, if you are not doing what you say you're going to do in one area of your life, that still slowly chips away at your confidence and your self-worth. And self-love and self-confidence are very intricately tied, right? Self-love and like keeping the promises to yourself are very intricately tied. So if you want to love yourself more, regardless of how your body looks, then it comes by keeping your word to you.
I love that so much. What a perfect way to end this podcast. I am going to have to make that ending quite a couple of clips because, like, this is a message everyone needs to hear. That is the answer to not only getting the the confidence that you want, but the physical results that you want that last. Because you can get all the physical results in the world, but you're going to be blind to them if your mental side, if your identity, if the inner work has not caught up with the physical. So that's a perfect way to end this. And is there anything?
Yeah, and that is how your identity is built, is by every day casting those votes. That's a James Clear quote, not a Marci Nevin one. So thank you. But I love it so much, and it's very true. So cast the votes with each decision that you make on a daily basis as the future version of yourself. And the more of those you accumulate, the more you shift your identity until you do have that belief that you are this type of person. So it can absolutely be changed.
I love that. Yeah, exactly. Perfect way to end this. And I'm going to put Marci's Instagram below. It is at Marci Nevin. Is there anything else? I'm pretty sure.
Not these days, my friend. That's it.
There we go. So go check out Marci, and she does, I don't know if they'll still be, they probably won't be very recent ones, but there are some protein finds and grabs from Costco if you are part of my 60% American listeners that listen to this podcast. Go and
Costco. Costco for the win these days. They are killing the game.
We have one here, but it's too far away for me to bother to. Actually, if you're an Australian and you shop at Costco, or there's a Costco near you, can you actually let me know and let me know what your go-tos are that you find from there, or your favorite protein hacks, what your favorite snack hacks, what your favorite bulk hacks are? Because I've never actually been to Costco, and I would be curious what the Australian ones are like. So hit me up with that.
Make a trip. So here's the deal with Ruby, or what am I trying to say? Here's the deal, Ruby, with Costco is make the trip and stock up, because you're one person and Costco sizes are ginormous. I don't actually shop there. I steal my mom's card because you can only get in with the card. And that's when I take all my pictures and whatnot. I have no reason to shop at Costco because I live by myself. So it would take me so long to go through all of that. I mean, I shouldn't say that, not with everything. But yeah, I think for you, just make the trip, get a bunch of what you need, load up on the ginormous sizes of things that are available, and then you don't have to go back for a while. It's worth it.
There we go. You got a trip. You got a tip for a trip there.
Exactly.
That is a tongue twister. But there we go. So let me know. And I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Give this podcast a 5-star rating if it benefited you. It would mean the world to me. I know I'm starting to end a lot of my podcasts with that, but honestly, it would mean the world if you just opened up Spotify, opened up Apple, and just click the 5-star. You don't really need to do much else. But love you all, and let Marci know if you enjoyed this as well, and tag us, share it to a friend privately, publicly. I don't care. The word just needs to get out.
Yeah. Thank you, Ruby. Great chatting again.
Bye. That was loud.
Bye.
That was high. Not